Good morning, everyone. I'd like everyone to please take your seats and come to order. We do have we're missing one voting member, so we do have a quorum. I'd like to call to order the Escambia County Planning Board regular meeting for April 6th, 2021. And at this time, I'd like to ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Like I said, we do have a quorum. Matter of fact, we just now got our full board, so we have a full quorum. At this time, I'd like to ask the staff, do we have proof of publication of the hearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and does that publication meet all of the legal requirements?
Yes, sir.
Chair will entertain a motion to waive the reading of the legal. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The meeting minutes from the previous board meeting have been provided to board members. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, Chair will entertain a motion to accept.
Aye.
Moved. Do we have a second? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The hearing package for today's date, April 6th, with the findings of facts has been previously provided to board members. The chair will entertain a motion to accept that hearing package with the findings of facts and the legal advertisement into evidence.
So moved.
Motion. Do we have second? Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The hearing package with the findings of facts and the legal advertisements will be marked and included for today's cases. At this time, we'll ask our court reporter to swear in the members of staff that are going to be testifying.
Raise your hand. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about the witness case is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
All right, thank you. Board members, you've been previously provided qualifications for these staff members. Does anyone have any questions regarding their ability to offer expert testimony in the area of land use and planning? Hearing none, Chair will recognize those individuals as experts in the area of land use and planning. At this hearing, the Planning Board is acting under its authority to hear and make recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners on the applications before us. These hearings are quasi-judicial in nature. Quasi-judicial hearings are like evidentiary hearings in a court of law, however, they are less formal. All testimony will be given under oath, and anyone testifying before the Planning Board may be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibit that the Planning Board considers are entered into evidence and will be made part of the record. Opinion testimony will be limited to experts, and closing arguments will be limited to the evidence in the record. Before making a decision, the Planning Board will consider relevant testimony, exhibits entered into evidence, and the applicable laws. Each individual who wishes to address the Planning Board must complete a speaker request form and hand it in to the staff members. You'll not be allowed to speak unless we receive a completed form. Please also note that only those individuals who are here and give testimony on the record today will be allowed to speak at the subsequent Board of County Commission hearing. No new evidence can be presented at that Board of County Commission meeting. Therefore, all testimony must be entered today. The Planning Board will provide a recommendation for the request to the BCC. They will then review the testimony, documents, and exhibits, consider the closing arguments, and make a final decision. All decisions by the BCC are final. Anyone who wishes to seek judicial review of that decision must do so in a court of competent jurisdiction within 30 days at the date that the BCC either approves or rejects the recommended order of the Planning Board. All written or oral communications outside of this hearing with members of the Planning Board is considered ex parte communications. Ex parte communications are presumed prejudicial under Florida law and must be disclosed as provided in BCC Resolution 96-13. As each case is heard, the chair will ask that any board members who have been involved in ex parte communication identify themselves and describe the communication. We are not in a rezoning case, so when staff presents, they will present the actual criteria that is required for vested rights to get it on the records. And so with that, we can talk about the process. The staff will give a presentation. The applicant will have an opportunity to give their information, then any witnesses that they may wish to present, and then if the staff has any witnesses or other information to enter, and then we will hear from members of the public who wish to speak on the matter that have completed a speaker request form. So at this time, I'm going to ask the board members, has there been any ex parte communication with you, the applicant, applicant's agents, attorneys, witnesses, with fellow planning board members, or anyone from the general public prior to this hearing? Have you visited the subject property? Please also disclose if you are a relative or business associate of the applicant, agent, or any of the parties. At this time, good morning, Steve.
Good morning. No to all.
Thank you.
No to
Eddie,
all.
thank you.
No to all.
No to all.
Chairman, no to all.
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 All right, thank you. Staff, was notice of this hearing sent to all interested parties?
Yes, sir.
Good morning. And was it also properly posted on the subject properties?
Yes, sir.
Okay. At this time, Drew, I believe you're going to be doing the presentation, okay? If you want to go in and maybe start with the criteria for the vested rights, since this is one of the first ones I think many members on this board have heard.
Can you go?
Hey, David, could you switch to the staff computer, please? Thank you.
All right, board. Vested rights. It is rare that we have one of these cases. There's only been a few over the years. Used to go to a separate committee. With the rewrite of the code, it now comes to you. Lucky you. So what is a vested rights case? A vested rights case is one in which someone has progressed, let's say, with a project based on some approval from the county. It could be as simple as we had one years ago when we adopted the new flu categories, where someone said, hey, under my old flu, I was allowed to do this. You changed the flu on me. What am I going to do now? Well, that was one that they were vested with what they had. They were able to prove that through no fault of their own, they had a approved development order, no fault of their own, that got changed on them. More often when we see them, they're similar to these two cases. These are two separate cases. They just happen to be next door in basically identical situations. In these cases, it's someone saying, look, through some act of omission, the county missed something, or commission, the county gave me a permit in error, I proceeded with my project, and I've invested money based on that action from the county staff. Once they find out, hey, look, there's a problem here, you have 12 months to file with the planning board for determination of vested rights. Your responsibility is going to be to offer a recommendation to the BCC of approval with conditions, or denial based on what is presented to you today. So I'm going to go through these one case at a time, and I will read the criteria as we get to them. Can you open up the first one, the slideshow, please?
Drew, since they are two separate cases, we'll go ahead and enter the information, give the applicant a chance to speak
Yes,
on the first
please.
case, and then we'll make a recommendation there, and then we'll move on to the second one. So-
Would you like me to give you just a basic background
Yes,
before we
please.
get into that?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna do so by going through the slides.
That's fine.
All right, if you would, please. So this is case VRD 2020 101. This is our location map. The site is essentially at the corner of Fowler and 9.5 Mile Road. Zoning on site is high-density mixed use that has a 15-foot rear setback and a 20-foot front setback. Future land use on site is mixed-use urban. This is an aerial map. The site is now cleared, which you will see from the site visit photos. This is public hearing sign that was posted on site. And this is looking east from up the edge of the road to a house, and it's reached that state of construction on site. This is looking north across the front of the site and looking south across the front of the site. The situation we have with this case, VRD 2021-01, the plans that were submitted did call for a 20-foot front setback. As constructed to this point, it has a 13-foot front setback. The difference is 7 feet. If you're questioning why did this not go to the Board of Adjustment for a variance, which is where normally someone would go if there's a problem with the setback, a variance to the Board of Adjustment is based on a unique physical hardship on the land. This is two essentially identical cases, the exact same error with both. They're not unique in that they're right next door to each other with the same problem. That is what has brought us to this point. These houses were permitted. I'll start by saying this house was permitted. The problem came in adding up some numbers and at what point was the error made and when did it get caught. I'm going to go ahead and, do you want me to go through the criteria or have the applicant present his case first?
Did you have a question, Tim?
Just real quick.
Yeah.
I get the 20-foot setback from where? Where does 20-foot start when you pull your tape?
From the right of way.
The right of way, not the road, obviously.
Not correct. Not the edge of the pavement. A rough guide, not saying it's 100%. A rough guide would be to look at that power pole right there. That's, well, once again, it's not a survey, can't guarantee, but that is, gets you in the neighborhood, so to speak.
Okay, Drew, and as far as entering the criteria in, that is part of the findings of fact, so it
Yes,
is
sir.
already part of the record. So
Yes.
if you just want to kind of skim through
Sure.
and specific to this
Okay.
case, so you don't have to read everything that's already part of the record.
Okay, so for vested rights, it's, yeah. First things first, for an application, it needs to be done within 12 months of finding out there's a problem that needs to come through this process. The first criteria is essentially saying that the use was allowed, and I'll just read it straightforward. The proposed use was authorized pursuant to a county development order or equivalent issued on or before the effective date of the code or on a pertinent amendment thereto, and the development has commenced and is continuing in good faith. In a claim based on this criterion, the owner must produce evidence of actions and accomplishments that substantiate timely and lawful progression towards the completion of the intentions and plans documented in the original order or equivalent. In a claim based upon this criterion, the right to which the owner may be vested is a continuation of the original order or equivalent. The second one, an owner is determined to have required rights due to good faith reliance on an act of commission or omission of the county, which has caused the owner to make such a substantial change in position or to incur such extensive obligations and expenses that it would be highly inequitable and unjust to destroy the rights acquired. In a claim based on this criterion, the owner must document and the county must verify the obligations and expenses that are in jeopardy. The owner must produce evidence of actions and accomplishments that substantiate timely and lawful progression towards the completion of the intentions and plans that have been jeopardized. Evidence including, but not limited to, that which demonstrates that such activity has not progressed in such a manner may be sufficient to negate a finding of good faith on the part of the owner and therefore invalidate the claim to vested rights. So these are the two criteria. Essentially, as it will say in the code, the owner can be entitled to this determination if it can be shown through competent substantial evidence that the proposed use meets the concurrency provisions such as they are in Article 5, and meets one of these two criteria. They only need to meet one of those two. As for that Article 5, instead of a development order, they got a building permit, okay? Building permit was signifying, yes, you do meet the conditions of Article 5. You can meet it for access, you can meet it for the solid waste services. It's utilities, all of that, it meets that. So, go with the
Okay.
applicant?
Yep, that's good. We'll hear from the applicant at this time, and then we'll come back with any questions that we may have. Good morning, Mr. Wallace. If you'll please come forward and be sworn in, sir.
We swear or affirm the testimony about to give, in this case, will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do. I will.
Thanks, sir. Good morning. Please state your full name and address for the record, sir.
Otto Wallace, 1090 Daffin Road, Molina, Florida.
All right, thank you, sir. Did you receive a copy of the staff's package with the findings of facts?
Yes,
Okay. And do you understand that you have the burden of providing substantial competent evidence that this proposed change is consistent with the plan, furthers the goals, objectives, and policies of that plan, and is not in conflict with the Land Development Code?
yes.
All right, sir, go ahead. Tell us what you got going
Well,
on.
Whenever we laid the buildings out, you got this, you got a site plan they approve at zoning, and on that site plan, it says it had 15 feet to the back, 20 in the front, and there was 42 foot of house. Well, when we laid it out from the back, put the 15 foot, went 42 foot, assuming that I had the 20 in the front. I never checked the front. When you look at it, it's a pretty good ways to the edge of the road, and I never checked the front. I messed up. And had my site guys there, and we should have caught it on the first inspection with the, when we were pouring the footer. We should have checked
Slab
the
survey.
setbacks at that time. It went on, we progressed, we poured the foundation, we built it. Somebody had a complaint, I think that what drew the attention, and then me and one of the inspectors had checked it, and yes, I was wrong, so.
Okay.
And I just pretty much messed up on that. And the owner has put in all this money to get it this far, and it's just not feasible to tear it down and start over, so. So we at y'all's mercy of letting us continue on. And we could have got the 4 foot. They could have given us 10%. I think zoning on they could have given us 10%, which is like 4 foot. So we're like 3 foot. So that's where we're at with the 7 foot.
Okay.
All right.
Board members, any questions for Mr. Wallace at this point?
I'm just curious how the complaint came about. My biggest question to this, I saw it was a complaint, but I was like, who figured that out? And I bet that was a bad day when you figured out.
Then inspector, when he come, we were supposed to, the building inspector, they got a complaint, so the building inspector come out, and he called me and he says, hey, I got a complaint. And so I met him over there, and sure enough, we both checked it, and I was 13 foot instead of 20 foot to the property line.
So the complaint was specifically due to the proximity to the road, or I'm curious?
It's my understanding, someone drove by and said, wow, those look really close to the front of the road, and put in an inquiry with the county, and that led to the discovery.
Well, they're good. That's a mistake, but anyway, thank you, sir.
All right,
Sir, I have a question, or two questions. Are you the contractor on the
Yes.
job?
yes.
You are. And the second question is, I'm looking through the notes, looked like the foundation inspection was on believe the 21st of December.
Mhm.
when after 21 December was a discrepancy discovered?
When was it discovered?
How long after the foundation had been inspected by the county?
Probably in March. Was it
Early March, late February, early March.
late February, early March, after we had the framing and the brick done? And we've been waiting on windows. That's why you see the plywood over the windows. Windows are crazy trying to get windows right now.
Hope you ordered your appliances already.
So in the sequencing of building inspections, how many inspections did the house pass before discovery of the non-compliance?
We had the foundation inspection, the slab inspection, the wind load inspection, and it was in between the wind load and the framing. And we have had a framing since then.
And going all the way back, you had site plan approval.
Mhm.
So site plan approval, grade inspection, slab inspection.
Yeah, we had electrical and plumbing, but I don't think that was part of the building, so. But we had electrical, plumbing, HVAC, all of it was inspected on the rough end.
All the while checking a list and moving forward.
Okay,
For the record, I believe, we're looking through the notes, looked like there was a footer inspection and a foundation inspection, correct?
other questions for Mr. Wallace? All right, sir, if you'll just, unless you have anything else to offer, any witnesses or any other information? All right, we'll just have a seat there in the front in case we have other questions. Drew, did you have anything else that you
Yes, sir.
wanted to add?
So I'm going to go through the findings here.
Okay.
And this is, once again, vested rights determination 2021-01. It's for 9820 Fowler Avenue. The applicant is seeking a vested rights determination to allow for an under-construction house to have a 13-foot front setback instead of the 20-foot front setback required by the zoning district. This request is specific to the second vested rights criterion provided by the Land Development Code. Under this criterion, the applicant is seeking to show that he has acquired rights due to a good faith reliance on an act of omission by the county staff. So for the criterion 1, the finding is this criterion has been met through the issuance of land use approval and a building permit and meets the concurrency provisions of Article 5. Criterion 2. This criterion has been met. Approval for the construction of a single-family residence on this parcel was granted on November 17, 2020. The submitted plot plan shows the depth of the parcel as 82 feet with a rear setback of 15 and a front setback of 20. The house is shown as 54 feet front to back. The house had setbacks, total a depth of 89 feet on an 82-foot parcel. This discrepancy was not caught at the time of permitting. The measurement for the foundation location began from the rear property line with the required 15-foot setback. Then the 54-foot house depth was marked, leaving only 13 for the front setback, 7 feet short of the required 20. During construction, inspections were done by county staff, but the discrepancy was not discovered. In early February 2021, a citizen requested the county review the front setback for compliance. On February 17, 2021, a county inspector measured the discrepancy and notified the builder to contact Development Services staff. Following a meeting with Development Services, the applicant applied for relief under the vested right provisions of the Land Development Code. The applicant continued the project in good faith reliance on this omission by staff and has submitted approximately $63,200 in expenses since the issuance of the building permit. The expenses and timely calls for inspections show this good faith effort and meet the requirements of this criterion. Given these facts, staff finds it would be inequitable to require the house to be modified to bring the front setback into compliance and recommends approval of the request for vested rights. If you would go ahead and pull up the plot plan that was submitted. There we go. All right, it didn't scan in so well. This is what was submitted at the time of the land use approval. And I'm hoping y'all can see a little better on your screens. It does show at the top of the page, which is the rear of the site, 15-foot setback. It shows the proposed structure as being 54 feet deep front to back and a 20-foot setback off the right-of-way of Fowler Avenue. Once again, here's our math problem. The lot is only 82 feet deep, and that was not caught at that point. After this land use approval, building permit was issued, inspections began, and here we are.
Okay. So Drew, it's your testimony and the findings of facts that the case has met both of the criteria, and I think you said earlier that you have to meet at least one of those criteria to be considered for approval.
That is
And
correct.
in this case, it has met both of the criteria.
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any additional questions?
Drew, I'm looking at the survey. Can you go to the survey? Am I reading this right? We're looking at parcel D there? And it shows a 15-foot setback in the rear?
So this survey was done construction is at the point that you've seen in the photographs. There's always going to be things just slightly off within tolerances. The width of a brick can come into that because the survey is spot on, accurate. That's what you're paying for. There are tolerances. You can see that on the side setbacks as well.
So this was done in February. Is that the date?
I believe so.
Okay. So it's after the fact.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. After the construction had progressed to the point that it is today.
Gotcha. No further questions.
Okay. Any other questions for the applicant or staff? If not, Chair will entertain a motion.
I was just gonna say real quick, I think it's shut and closed. It's a mistake, happens. They've spent a lot of money. They shouldn't be penalized for this. It got to this point. There's a lot of burden on the county for inspections, and you only find that out when it comes time to, A, address a complaint after the fact, or in this case, someone, again, and I don't know how, they could visually see that setback issue. Is there anything they can do as far as cautionary, what would prompt people to say, wow, that looks awfully close to the road? Is there any additional landscaping or visual traffic calming or something that we can address it with? Just, and like I said, way over caution, because later down the road when that same person says, man, I can't believe you guys let them get away with that.
So, as a board, what you're tasked with is to recommend to the BCC either approval with conditions, or denial. Whatever you see fit there.
All right, in case number VRD 2021-01, I recommend we approve it. We approve it as it is, undertaking any measures that are possible by the builder to call attention to the proximity to the right-of-way.
Second.
Thank you. Motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right. We're going to go directly into the next case, which is VRD 2021-02. And although I realize that all of this is very similar, we do still have to ask about ex parte because it is a separate case. So members of the board, has there been any ex parte communication between you, applicant, agents, attorneys, witnesses, planning board members, or anyone in the general public prior to this hearing? Have you visited the subject property? Also disclose if you're a relative or business associate of any of the parties. And Steve?
No to all.
Thank you.
No to all.
No to all.
No to all?
Chairman, no to all?
No to all.
No to all.
No to all.
Okay, thank you. And staff, on this case, was a notice hearing sent to all interested parties?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. And was it also posted properly on the subject site?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Mr. Wallace, if you'll just come back up again, since this is a separate case, you've already been sworn in, you still are under oath. On this case, which is right next door, do you understand that you have the burden of providing substantial competent evidence that this request is consistent with the plan, furthers the goals, objectives, and policies of that plan, and is not in conflict with the Land Development Code?
Yes.
Okay, and I hate to make you do this, but this is a separate case
Right.
and we're recording it, so just
Okay.
go ahead and give us a brief overview again.
All right, well, whenever we laid it out, laid out from the back according to the, zoning plot plan. And we went to 15 foot off the back, the same as the other one, and 54 foot. And then assumed we had the 20 and we had 13, but the math didn't add up on the zoning, and I never checked it. I just went off of what was in there.
Okay.
It was on that plan. So I messed up on that one.
All right,
On
so-
both of them at the same time, because they were both done identical.
All right, on this case, board members, do you have any questions for the applicant? Okay,
Were all timelines the same? Were these homes built simultaneously?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Inspections practically simultaneous?
Yes. Same time.
okay. Kia, as far as the staff presentation, can we have an abbreviated version since it's in the findings, since Drew has done that, and just read the findings of each of the criteria? Would that be appropriate?
Yes, that's fine, because it is already in the record.
Okay, all right. So Drew? you would-
All right, this is the findings for vested rights determination 2021-02. This is 9824 Fowler Avenue. Applicant is seeking vested rights determination to allow for an under-construction house to have a 13-foot front setback instead of the 20-foot front setback required by the zoning district. This request is specific to the second vested rights criterion provided by the Land Development Code. Under this criterion, the applicant is seeking to show that he has acquired rights due to good faith reliance on an act of omission by the county staff. For the first criteria, this criterion has been met through the issuance of land use approval and a building permit and meets the concurrency provisions of Article 5. Criterion 2, this criterion has been met. Approval for the construction of a single-family residence on this parcel was granted on November 17th, 2020. The submitted plot plan shows the depth of the parcel is 82 feet with a rear setback of 15 feet and a front setback of 20 feet. The house is shown as 54 feet front to back. The house and setbacks total a depth of 89 feet on an 82-foot parcel. This discrepancy was not caught at the time of permitting. The measurement for the foundation location began from the rear property line with a required 15-foot setback. Then the 54-foot house depth was marked, leaving only 13 feet for the front setback, 7 short of the required 20 feet. During construction, inspections were done by county staff, but the discrepancy was not discovered. In early February 2021, a citizen requested that the county review the front setback for compliance. On February 17, 2021, a county inspector measured the discrepancy and notified the builder to contact Development Services staff. Following a meeting with Development Services, the applicant applied for relief under the vested rights provisions of the Land Development Code. The applicant continued the project in a good faith reliance on this omission by staff and has documented approximately $63,200 in expenses since the issuance of the building permit. The expenses and timely calls for inspections show this good faith effort and meet the requirements of this criterion. Given these facts, staff finds that it would be inequitable to require the house to be modified to bring the front setback into compliance and recommends approval of the request for vested rights.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Yes, sir.
Drew, are there any other lots adjacent, and are you concerned about the neighbor? I doubt that it's, desirable to be closer to the road. However, I can imagine somebody saying, man, they're cutting my line of sight, or do you foresee any problems with the next door neighbors' future?
Well, predicting the future is is a difficult thing. As you can see, these two lots are the two on the south end here. This one that's highlighted in red, the one immediately below it. The two adjacent to the top, this was all part of a minor or as we say, unplatted subdivision. I don't have the measurements on those two in the front. If someone goes to construct on those, I guarantee everything's going to be double checked at least after this.
Okay. Any other questions for staff or the applicant? Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion to approve with staff's findings. All right, do we have a second?
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, gentlemen, good luck with it. And at this point, we will close out the quasi judicial portion. So thank you, Dave, for your help this morning. And we will go directly into our next item, which is an action discussion item concerning OLF 8. And this is overview from DPZ and basically an update from the March 11th Committee of the Whole meeting. I don't know if any of you had a chance to watch the County Commission meeting, but I'm sure we'll hear all of the updates at this point. So, who is going to be presenting for us on this one?
Looks like you.
They all bailed out on you.
DPC is online to present.
Okay. All right.
DPZ, we're ready for you guys if you're ready.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. So I have a brief presentation to share with you on my screen.
Marina, do you happen to have a headset? It picks up better if you have a headset on, I think.
Yeah, let me do that. Apologies. I'll take 2 seconds to connect my headset.
No problem. We don't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, good.
Okay, proceed when you're ready.
Thank you. I'm going to try to share my screen. It's a brief presentation. So on behalf of our team, I'm sorry we're not there in person again. We're hopeful to start traveling again in May, so the next time you see us, it'll be in person. As you're likely aware, this project has had strong opinions on both sides, and so the plan before you today is very much a compromise plan. But my presentation today is quite brief, and I want to bring you up to speed on the work done to date and to provide you with the framework under which we hope to develop the zoning for the site, which will be coming back to you in early June. Can you hear me?
Yes.
As you may recall, December 7th last year is when we presented 4 plans to you that were developed during the public charrette. The BOC asked us to develop a 5th plan, and so we did. The hybrid one is the one we're presenting today that has the potential, we hope, to be a win-win scenario for the county, a win for jobs, a win for the community, and a win for Escambia County as a whole. So we wanted to suggest a path forward for the zoning and get your feedback. Sorry, it's absolutely incredible. I apologize. As per the commission directives, they wanted a confirmation on the amount of developable land, and there's 424 developable acres, or 78% of the site. As you can see, approximately 50% of the frontage along 9 Mile Road is bordered by wetlands. With our environmental consultant GIT, we created a conservative conservation boundary line within which we don't recommend developing because it could be cost prohibitive to fight the site's natural topography. And we also recognize that any changes to the forested area would require modification to the terrain and required to stabilize the slopes because it also happens to be the lowest part of the site. And backfilling it could exacerbate flooding problems downstream, so we're not recommending it. Now, commercial buildings come in very different sizes, so we modeled each to help the community understand the amount of land that each type would occupy with its own parking. And here are the many blocks we developed for the commerce. We also did a range for housing too, of all the acceptable building types we heard were desirable for the site. And we use this to better understand the potential type of commerce and light industrial uses and the different square feet per employee for each job type to understand how much land can be accommodated, how many jobs can be accommodated on so much land. And we looked at nationwide averages across a range of sectors to average them out to see what we could get. And the takeaway is that the vast majority of the jobs out there, outside distribution centers, which provide 2 to 5 jobs an acre, much less acreage is needed to accommodate the type of high-tech jobs the county is going to pursue. So for example, 72 acres gets you 1,000 jobs for warehouse buildings, but much less if they come in the form of office park, medical office compos, and that type of building. In most cases, much less land is needed, which is not surprising. So there's a wide range provided here. So if the county were to go for that middle range, assuming they attract some large warehouse types and some small office footprints and some in between, you can see here that 1,000 jobs can come anywhere from 9 to 72 acres, 2,000 jobs comes anywhere from 18 to 144 acres, and so on and so forth. So these are the post-charrette plans that are already outdated, but I'm showing them to you for context since you hadn't had a chance to see them and to explain the adjusted hybrid plan. All 3 plans are anchored to the bones or framework of the market plan. So there's retail along 9 Mile Road on all of them, and the conservation boundary has been retained in all of them as well. It's consistent on all 3. What changes is the amount of land that is devoted to commerce alone. So Plan 1, which is the commerce plan, dedicated the entire land to commerce with retail down along 9 Mile Road, which may or may not have some residential. Plan 2 is a hybrid plan that provided up to 250 acres for commerce and allocated the remainder of the land for residential development with mixed housing types. And Plan 3 was the market plan, which reserved about 90 acres for commerce and dedicated the rest of the land for residential development. The point is that this plan has elasticity where the BOC could decide what is a reasonable amount of land to devote to commerce, and what we suggested was considering sunsetting some of the acres if within X years, and that time frame was to be determined, the available land for commerce hadn't been absorbed. And I'll show diagrams of how that works. I also want to note that all plans show a robust network of open spaces and parks distributed across the site, which we regarded as a vital component of an integrated public realm, which the community spoke loudly about that they wanted. It's important to any plan because we don't think of parks necessarily as only amenities, but necessities for a healthy citizenry. And in these times of COVID, of course, health and wellness are at the forefront of livable communities. So while we drew 3 plans, we explained to the BOC that the possibilities are much greater. And so we outlined here in pink the 3 plans that were drawn, but we added options in between to illustrate the growing or shrinking of the commerce-only land. So I don't need to repeat how many jobs can be accommodated in 36 to 288 acres, but the blunt truth was that we didn't need to allocate all 350 acres to commerce. So we encourage them to address the other goals that your comprehensive plan speaks to, other than, the jobs, which we know the community wants and which is always the most important feature here. The good news is that the site can accommodate a lot of different uses, and we really see it as becoming Beulah's Heart or Village Center or whatever name it's given. So here's where we left off with this is the plan that is moving into phase 3, which is the implementation phase. And essentially it shows the land uses allocated per plan. The retail remains along 9 Mile Road and in proximity to it, of course. And we anticipate 2 different types of retail. The bigger retail that wants to be along 9 Mile Road would be different to the smaller scale, more neighborhood friendly retail that people could walk to that would be interior to the site. It can also accommodate office jobs and in multi-story buildings above retail as well as residential, of course. Public amenities have been made consistent across all plan. And then now you see the amount of land devoted to commerce changing across each plan. So what we did here is we said you grow it gradually over time. And we worked on this plan in collaboration with Commissioner Bender, the chair of the board, as well as a few other stakeholders. And essentially what it does is it suggests that some land be devoted to commerce in perpetuity and others sunset if it doesn't develop so that it could convert to another use. And you see it sort of marching across the site. Same with residential. We begin to develop residential slowly while commerce is being developed. So residential has a 3-year life cycle because it's actually faster. The first phase would be 5 years because the infrastructure has to go in. The commerce park, of course, has about 271 acres devoted to it. It may all go to commerce if it gets absorbed within this time frame, or portions of it may go to other uses. So our challenge for us was to think, well, how will we make the zoning work for this? And so today is two more slides to just talk to you a little bit about how we're anticipating doing this and getting your preliminary feedback or questions you may have. So we have 2 options for the FLU, either MUU or C, and both require a large-scale map amendment, which we know takes about 60 days, maybe shorter. We are proposing a FLU of mixed-use urban as it provides the greatest flexibility in uses. It permits commercial, retail, light industrial, recreational uses, amongst others. The other option, C, if it was given a zoning designation of commerce as well, would restrict residential unnecessarily. So that is reserved exclusively for those areas where commercial development is the predominant use or where residential may be secondary to commercial development. Because those limitations typically require a substantial and costly process to change, we wanted to minimize those instances where that would occur. And so the commerce is allocated to those areas where land would be held in perpetuity or where land is not for commerce and or where it's not ideal for housing. And in terms of the zoning, we've been encouraged by the BOC to write special zoning for this site, as the current zoning is a little too limiting, and we want to encourage the provision of a lot of the building types that the current zoning would preclude. So preliminarily, here are some of the suggestions. And of course, our intention is to provide all the zoning development control for all of these zoning districts, but we wanted your feedback. So essentially, the neighborhood center permits commercial, residential, mixed use, and multifamily housing. It would be limited to 4 or 5 stories to be determined, up to 60 units an acre. We know that's much higher than what you currently allow right now, but if we want to see buildings up against the street with parking hidden that are 4 to 5 stories, that's the density per acre that you can achieve. The NCR, which is restricted, does not permit residential uses, as I already explained, along Nalmar Road. Then there's the CD and the CDR, which prioritize commercial uses, but the CD would allow residential uses once that time has elapsed if the commerce isn't occupied on that site. And then the neighborhood general permits all uses from single family, mostly attached, multifamily, mixed use and commercial, but it would be limited to 3 stories maximum. And then the R1 and the R2 again prioritize commercial or light industrial for a set time frame. And then the neighborhood edge would limit uses to very low intensity residential uses, but encourage civic uses and small scale commercial limited to 1 or 2 story right up against the park. And then the CP, of course, would prohibit development. So now we're thinking about how we can adjust those boundaries and get those right as part of the process. We also want to include form standards to each zone to ensure that building present a pedestrian-friendly facade and a walkable and or bikeable environment. And Commissioner Bergosh is also keen to ensure design standards are included to make sure the buildings are good looking enough. So we're also going to be adding some design standards to the zoning for developers to all adhere to. And that essentially is my presentation. I would love to stop sharing, at least open it up to questions or comments or thoughts.
Thank you. Board members, your initial thoughts and questions?
Hey, Marina, does DPZ think of Escambia County like the crazy uncle at Thanksgiving? And, they're always curious about what they're going to find come holiday, how they're going to act. I appreciate the flexibility. You know, we thought we had it all squared away last time, but obviously we were wrong. I think it's interesting. I guess For the county staff, I'm certain you guys have been working together. As long as these proposed zoning categories are workable, it seems fairly evident that this is the way to go if we want to go forward at all.
Good. Board members, Walker?
And so, just so I'm clear, it looks like we've kind of gotten to a plan that gives the county the option, based on who's wanting to come in or not come in, to change this plan around in certain areas of the property, if they don't find commercial or they're looking to get it in a set time frame, then they can switch to possibly residential, and just kind of gives us a little bit more of a framework to make this kind of a working plan. Is that kind of what this hybrid's doing?
That's correct.
Okay. And I think the zoning categories look flexible enough. If the county's good with them, then I think this looks
We've
good to me.
just begun to define it and to discuss it with the county, and of course, there's much more work to do. We just wanted to present the framework to see if there's general agreement. Planning staff seem open to it. If you are all open to it, we'll be coming back to you in about a little under 2 months to really present the whole package, the zoning that would be assigned to every one of these categories.
Okay.
Hello, Miranda, I'm glad you stated that. And after, I don't want y'all to say, well, I thought those was the planning categories. Marina and staff, we're gonna continue to work on those, but it's gonna be something like that. It's gonna be definitely something like that. This is their first draft, and they're doing a good job with it. But staff's gonna do further engagement with them to make sure that everything, and there may be some changes, there may be some adjustments. So we're not gonna bring those changes back at every step. You'll see the final product once we come back. So I just wanna be clear with that. But it's definitely, that is a good framework, a good starting point.
Mr. Fears?
Let's dream for a minute and say that all this sticks and it just goes as is with 4 or 5 new zoning categories. Staff, would these zoning categories then be existent across Escambia County and be an option for development in all 5 districts?
All right. John Fisher. So where the county stands right now, we have not got any discussion, verbal or really concrete of anything about what these zoning categories will firmly exist yet. We're getting ready to start on that process right after this meeting where we can start getting into more of the details. What we're looking at, so you're going to have the zoning categories. They're going to give us the language for each zoning category. This will be strictly this site, OLF8 only, okay? So this is for only OLF8, nothing else, only inside this area. The future land use category, one thing that we'll have to be thinking about down the road, which we are trying to work with right now, is this will have to come back for a future land use change. We're kind of doing it backwards, kind of not backwards. We want to get to the land development code part to where it can be approved. Then we'll come back, since the BCC is the ultimate, sayer, they'll say whatever's, needs to be done, they're going to have, done. Ultimately, though, DEO still has to look at it. So that is one of the, things that we still have to adhere to. The big issue is the future land use categories. The max that we have in our current future land use categories is 25 dwelling units per acre. So one thing we're going to, we'll be trying to implement is how we get that 60 dwelling units. Is it just for, parcel areas that is needed? How we writing the language. So this would be kind of like an urban service area where we write the language just for OF8 only. Mixed use urban will allow this at OF8 only, nowhere else in the county. That will be part of the language that will come to you guys, go to DEO, and go to the BCC. So that's stuff that's going to happen after the BCC is happy with the plan. Okay.
And that, as I understand it, just from watching some of the commission meetings, especially the committee of the whole meeting, the commissioners are pretty set on this hybrid plan. I don't think they're going to vary much from that plan. We just have to get into the details of the flu and the zoning at this point. But they're pretty seem pretty set on that idea, from what I
Well,
can
this
see.
is where we get to the nitty-gritty of
Right.
the setbacks, the height of the buildings. You know, it's not going to be your 25 feet, you know, front and rear setback. This is going to be a lot tighter community environment. So it's got to be a much different, and I can always let Marina talk about that part, but I think we're not really at that discussion yet because they're still trying to figure out. This is a very unique plan with the fact that it's flex.
Yeah.
This is something they've really never done before. So this is something we're all trying to gather our heads around.
And honestly, I like the idea of having the flex because it does give opportunity to kind of change gears down the road if we have to. We never know what's going to happen, but I like that piece of it. So, board members, we do have one speaker. Is there anyone who had questions or comments before I?
Yeah, I mean, the way it sounds to me, though, is that we're treating this property completely different than we would treat any other property that, say, an individual invested in, which is who typically buys property and does development. And we're giving them a whole lot more, this property, a whole lot more flexibility and design and in dealing with the zoning and dealing with the flu than we would any other homeowner or any other property owner. And I struggle with that a little bit. I struggle with treating the people that are the citizens of this county different than we do that piece of property that was purchased for commerce purposes in the first place and took years to get to.
And Mr. Sammons, you are correct. That was the desires, the intent of the board, as Commissioner Barry did reference from the committee of the whole, and you are correct. But this is the thing. The good thing with this is that we are starting. This property is a clean slate. There is no zoning category on it. There is no future land use category, except for public. So therefore, we can start clean. I mean, it's raw land. The other properties sometimes that other owners have to deal with, they come with many more constraints than this land would, because it's clean, it's raw, it's empty, vacant land. So therefore, it can be designed a little differently and more progressively, and yet stay in line with the intent of the desires of the commissioners, as well as with the desires of the citizens. But again, this guideline, this framework of plan is definitely what will be moving forward.
Yeah, and I would call that unbalanced, stacked against the ordinary property owner.
Understood.
May I make a comment?
Yes, Marina, go ahead.
It's not unusual for, think of this as a PD. You know, many cities have planned unit development or planned development, whatever you want to call it, where there's under certain conditions for a site that is large enough, or if it's a strategic investment area for a county or a city, special zoning is written for that. We do this all around the country, and it's actually quite common. Now, that's not to say that down the line, if you find that you like the development that this site is going to be encouraging, that you wouldn't expand the opportunity to use these zoning categories across the rest of the county. And that would be our hope, that this down the line could be used elsewhere. But right now we want to start on this site. But I just wanted to let you know that it's actually very common. I mean, that's why planned development, the concept of planned development exists to begin with.
I was going to say, isn't it, Horace, this is like a PUD on steroids. I mean, it really is.
Yes,
That's
yes,
exactly
you're
what
right,
it
you're right.
is.
And Marina, and they've been doing this a long time, and we agree with them, with the concepts and ideas. Basically, the basic bottom line, that's what it is. You're right, Mr. Powell.
Okay.
And by the way, one other thing is that your DSAP to the north of I-10, immediately following, if you can see my mouse up here, has also written rules that are quite different, intended to encourage another kind of urban form. So so there's precedent set here as well.
Okay. Any other questions, board members? All right, Ms. Blackwell?
Good morning, Teresa Blackwell. I live in Beulah. I didn't really prepare. I wanted to see how I wanted to react to this. And I will say right off the bat that the meeting Commissioner Bender held Commissioner Burgosh says all the stakeholders were at the table. No, the residents were not at the table. Not a single resident. We had 2 economic development people there, and they represented that Commerce Park idea. And we had Keith Hoskins. He was, and I do trust DPZ to want a good development. But other than that, the people of Beulah were not at the table. And the compromise here would have been the market plan, the one we proposed, the one we approved, we in the end wanted. So I would hope, my hope is that in the future that NGR2 eventually would have some residential up on Frank Reeder to go along next to that residential there, and that you'd put back some of that little park area for that particular little neighborhood. That's my hope for the future, and that's a very long-term thing. I'll be dead by then, but you never know with modern medicine. But anyway, but I do agree. If we could put the adjusted, this is fine. I can talk about this. The edge one, the NE. I had a little concern with that. I thought I heard Marina say something about residential possibly on the edge. That would be great on the other side of the fence on the residential areas. I don't want to cut into any of that community use area. The NE, which already is going to have a school, which is good, but the park space, and I love it, the conservation of all that forest. Please, please, let's do that. It's beautiful, it's gorgeous. We need to capitalize on that. But we also need some open space around that forest for the public use. They can't, penetrate the woods, so they need some land adjoining that to enjoy that. Let's see. Flex is great. That's great. And I'm a little concerned about the big box on 9 Mile Road. What's that going to look like from the road? There should be an attractive edge there. I imagine it looks like there's a little edge there that might be vegetated. I don't want to look at a big, not Dillard's, but, say Costco. I don't want to look at that on 9 Mile Road, and I don't think that'd be very inviting for other people. But the interior village, more like village retail, that sounds like a good idea. And I very mumuch agree with the density, if I didn't say that already, in the center of the town. Beulah already is probably over 30,000 within 5 miles of OLF8, but they'll grow to 40, 50,000. So it makes sense to have density in the center. And it also makes tax sense. Each story you go up, you get, it really multiplies your revenue. So we need that to make this function, to provide revenue, to do all those other things for the public amenities. So, the future of Beulah, with the way the county has been run, I think the future of Beulah could be independence. So we need to think, how can we be financially viable into the future? And we need to plan this so that is done. And my other concern is when this retail happens, somebody needs to know what they're doing when they figure out what goes there, because it is a very delicate thing to make it work financially, to make it work together so that it can be successful. And DPZ, I think, will be off the clock at that point. So we're going to have to figure out how that's going to be done. We could use some people in that industry to help us figure that out and get it right, because it's not an easy thing to make it work. Some places it doesn't. So thank you very much. And I think good job. This framework looks, the mixed UU, that's what Mr. Jones and I have talked about in the past, and I think that's good. So thank you.
Ms. Blackwell, I have a question.
Yes.
Bottom line, do you support this plan?
Bottom line, yes, with some hope for the future. In general, this is a win. This is a win for the people of Beulah. When I first stood up there in front of the county commission and said, no, this is not what we need, it's been probably 5 years ago now. And at that point, it was all going to be commerce. So there's a lot here to celebrate. We got a third of the land for other uses, which is fantastic. Now, I have to keep being tough all along and not happy, and, so the other side will, feel good too, but it's a win. it's a big win for Beulah. Could be more, and maybe it will be later.
Thanks for all you've done with this.
Thank you. It has not been easy. When you step forward in the public, you get a lot of flack, a whole lot of flack. And, you know, I had someone yesterday saying, I answered her questions, and she's like, well, who are you? Is this your subject? Is this your, what makes this your baby? And I'm like, well, if 5 years doesn't do it, I don't know what will. I just didn't answer it. I just put a laugh, you know. So it's a tough thing to be out in the public, and I hope to retire. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blackwell.
And thank you, Jay.
Board members, any additional questions from the staff? The time frame, I guess, is fairly quickly moving forward.
All right, so the time frame is obviously DBZ will be submitting to us in sometime mid-May their basically final packet. The team will look over it for about a week to 10 days, get back, go back and forth with them about any changes that we might see needed internally, to where we can try to keep our languages kind of the same, that what's already consistent with the LDC type of deal if need. So it will be back here looking for final adoption or recommendation, I'm sorry, June 1st, then right to the BCC, June 3rd. The deadline from the BCC was to have this completed by the end of May. So we're fast tracking this to skipping over the future land use, basically get the LDC. We're knowing this is what is proposed. We'll come back after the adoption of the, basically the master plan PUD, whatever we want to call it. Once that's done, I'll, hopefully come back in July. Here's the recommendations for the future land use to send to DEO for transmittal to you guys if everything goes. Now the BCC could say, we want some changes, send it back to the planning board, or they could change it right there and to move forward. And June 3rd's meeting. So that's going to be the meeting that we'll figure out if it comes back or if we can move forward with the future land use categories.
Okay, so that June 1st meeting is pretty important, though we have a good quorum here, so everybody try to make sure you can make that one. Okay.
Yeah,
Mr. Sammons.
I'm gonna say it again. I recognize I can count votes. I'm a loser in this situation. I can feel it already, but I'm going to make it clear from my perspective that I struggle with creating a situation that other landowners in the area can't also utilize to get the most profitable version of their property. And I just struggle with that. I think it's wrong that the county puts itself in an advantage over its citizens. But that's my opinion.
Thank you, sir.
I guess just to kind of speak to your point, I get where you're coming from on the county taking advantage of their property, and it seems to be making their own rules and where you're sitting. But I think when we look at this piece of property and the potential for 3,000 to 5,000 people to be employed on this site. I think that this is something that we need to look at and do everything we can to make it happen for the future of this community. And so I get the heartburn that you're having, and I think it's valid. But, I think if there was a private landowner that had a large piece of property that could employ 3,000 to 5,000 folks on it, I think the county would jump all over doing whatever they could to make that happen as well. And then the second question, Ms. Hightower, is there, I noticed there's still a school in the plan. Is there a threshold for the school district that says when we get to this many residential units on this piece of property, that's going to trigger that we need a school, or is it just a mere fact that we're going to have residential on this piece of property that we need a school?
We have decided that no matter whether they have residential on that site or not, we're going to need a school in that area. So that was why we were jumping on it, trying to make sure that we had some land available there, because as we've heard often and we all know, there is a lot of growth in that area. So we need to have some property there.
Makes sense to me.
Yes, come forward, Ms. Blackwell.
Ms. Hightower,
I mean, early on, we mentioned we'll probably need a high school too. So shouldn't that be figured into this plan somewhere?
The superintendent and one of our school board members met with Commissioner Bender, and we discussed some of these things, and there's a process that we have to go through. And there's a decision-making that has not been made yet about what, but if we were to ask for a high school there, we would need considerably more land. And we have not been able to persuade people to give us more at this point. So that is going to be kind of what we'll have to look at. But we know that we'll need elementary. It could be a K-8, and then we can work with the schools that we have. But you know, it's flexible depending on what happens out there. But we do know that we're going to need an educational facility in that area.
Thank you.
I have a question for Marina, the staff. When we start talking about placement of schools and we're going to have possibly restaurants and the question of alcohol being within the boundary of a school, has that been thought through as far as the placement?
All of that will be looked at and discussed. And
Okay.
Marina can jump in as well.
Because
Yeah,
I mean,
that's why the school is pushed closer to this area up here. And, you know, the restaurants all would be down here. I do want to make a quick comment about the schools, because I happen to be coming to you from a community that DPZ designed back in 1988. And we have an elementary school that's about 10 acres. This is in Montgomery County, Maryland, and a middle school of about 11, 12 acres embedded in the community. And it is, I can't stress how wonderful it is to see that children can actually walk to the school. Of course, lots of kids are here, but the fact that so many of the neighborhood kids who live here can actually walk to it is a really, it's just a beautiful thing. And the fact that Beulah could have a school that is embedded in a walkable environment that this site provides, I really appreciate Teresa. I know it was painful for her to say that it's, she supports this plan and devils in the details, but it very much is a compromise plan, and we're hoping that will be one of the benefits that comes out of the development of the site.
Drew?
And when it comes to the alcohol, that has been changed, so it's not a 1,000-foot radius. With a school, it is to the nearest point of school grounds. That's for on-premise consumption or package sales. But it's a 1,000-foot walking distance along the nearest route of ordinary conveyance. That does give a lot more wiggle room for a mixed kind of development like this.
Okay, I think it's, again, this is more of the details, but I think it's very important with a school that we look at the traffic flow as well. We see up on Kingsfield Road, they had problems with Ransom in the elementary school with people going in that neighborhood and waiting for their children and things like that. So I would hate to see that we really turn this into a traffic quagmire during the morning and the afternoon because of the school. So I think that really has to be very carefully thought out, the access and ingress and egress and everything, so.
One good thing would be to, you have residential around the school where they can walk.
That was what I was going to say. Thank you, John.
Yeah.
Because as Marina said, the optimal thing is to have the school in close to the residential area so that the students can walk and you don't have to worry about the cars. They can bike and they can walk. We wish that, I know you've seen the news about our hazardous walkways and the fact that we don't have enough sidewalks, and we've talked about that at this board on numerous occasions. That would help more students be able to walk to school if they didn't have to walk down the middle of the street.
Good, good. All right, any other questions or comments? Now, is this listed as an action item or just a discussion for us today? Discussion only, so we don't have to take any action today, okay. All right, so we'll look forward to getting back to the details at a future point. Thank you for your input, Ms. Blackwell. You have been very involved, and I think it's a compromise on your behalf, but also on the commissioners. So I think we're moving in the right direction. So Okay, at this point, Horace, I'd like to go back, if we could, on the agenda, back to the follow-up report and the 6-month. Has there been any cases that there's been a change with what the planning board recommended to the commissioners?
No, there has not. The rezoning cases that was recommended for approval or denial, it stayed on course. We will be bringing back the tiny homes. That was an action to come back, and it will be coming back to the planning board to discuss the changes that the staff is working on.
Okay. So while you have the floor, do you have anything for director's review?
We want to say thank you, board. We have lots of things that's coming your way. We appreciate your help, appreciate your support. We appreciate even Mr. Gary Sammons. I don't want you to think, Mr. Sammons, that you are the lone wolf. It's good to have somebody, fresh eyes, and look at things. So we appreciate all of that. So again, we're looking forward to continue working relationship.
All right, thank you. Public forum. Anyone for public forum? Ms. Blackwell, did you have anything? You're the only one from the public left, so.
I guess for once I have nothing else to say.
All right. Thank you. Kia, County Attorney's Report, anything?
Nothing from me, thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, board members, anything else? All right, our next scheduled meeting will be on Tuesday, May 4th, here in this room at 8:30. And then we look forward to getting more information on this plan coming up so we can have it ready for the June 1st. We'd like to get that information as early as possible so we can all review it. All right, if there's nothing else, then we are adjourned. And Horace, would you ask them to maybe adjust our clock up here? Just, I mean, we know it's off, but we kind of glance up there every once in a while, so.